Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Dr. Unati here, your host. It's been a long time I haven't tuned up here. I am here today with my two favorite people. We're going to discuss issues that matter to us. I'm excited about the topic. We decided today to do a freestyle where we're going to just attend to your questions. So drop in those questions. We're going to attend to them. Today, I have two guests for you. Right on the top right, I have Dr. Kevin Washington. He's a clinical psychologist in the States. And below him is Daniel. Dan, you know Mr. Dan, he's our president of GPEN. Good morning, Dr. Kevin and Dan. How are you today?
Good morning.
Good afternoon. Good morning, Dr. Unati. How are you?
Good. I know it's afternoon in Kenya right now. Okay, you know what?
Yeah, it's evening.
It's evening, yes, I know. Today, I just thought, let's just go freestyle route. What we're going to do today, it's different. We don't have any topic like that will go in sequence. We're going to go whichever direction. I'm going to ask these gentlemen their experiences in their clinical practice in the case of Dr. Kevin. And of course, Dan will tell us all, share what he sees in his community. Today, I just thought, let's talk about the words we use a lot in Africa. Crazy. Dr. Kevin, do you want to take us through why do we have this word and it has a negative connotation? When I want to start one of my patients on an antidepressant, or maybe there's some psychotic features, they like, no, I'm not crazy. Oh, those crazy people. Do you want to take us through where did this word come from? Because it limits our people for seeking medication. It limits our families for taking their people or their families for help. Do you want to take us through, Dr. Kevin?
Right. So within the context of worldview, we have to understand what is normal behavior and what is abnormal behavior. In every society, every cultural group has its definition of what is normal and abnormal, and even how that is explained, right? So, for example, among the Bama, they talk about sekere folo. Sekere folo is when part of the self that is Daya. Daya is in the spiritual realm and the physical realm at the same time. If Daya leaves the body, then the body, a person is standing there like a deer in headlights or like an animal in headlights, right? They cannot move. It is frozen. And so when Daya returns to the body, then one is not sekere folo anymore. So there's a way to explain that within the worldview. So we know that different social groups have a way of explaining the various behaviors. And so we often don't think about how to treat that, how to attend to that. And I think that's one of our major challenges. And we cannot use, I want to be clear, we cannot use European constructs to define African reality. So we have to define it for ourselves, know what it is, and then we have to figure out what's the best way to treat that. And then that's when we talk about the medications. What kind of medications work best? But first of all, how do we define the thing? And so the worldview gives us a way to look at how to define that thing.
Of course. I love that because it seems like it depends on the culture you grow up in, the society you are in. But I'll tell you this, it limits this specific word, limits our people from seeking help. Then you're going to tell me this because I know growing up in South Africa, I saw a lot of people. Now I know they were struggling or suffering from psychosis. And these people were, a lot of them, unfortunately, they do not get the help they need from the families and also in the society they grow up in. When you look at the worldwide stats, actually psychosis is one of the leading disabilities worldwide and the causes of actually death. So this is a crisis, not only just for Africa, it's a global crisis. And unfortunately, there is lacking systems or probably protective systems to protect these people. What do you see in Kenya? What are the resources for these people? I'm pretty sure you know of an old man or even a young person who is labeled crazy.
Yeah, certainly. That word crazy is usually stigmatizing even to the person. And it's a way that makes one feels less human, and that makes that person isolate himself or herself, and will not even go a step forward to seek help because it's also derogatory in nature. And we need to find ways in which we can eradicate this kind of stigma and see mental health like any other diseases, like malaria. When someone has malaria, he or she is treated without being stigmatized, because everyone knows that malaria is a disease that can affect everyone. In Kenya, you see so many people with mental illness and psychosis living in horrible conditions, deplorable conditions, and no one cares. You will see them even eating food from the garbage, no one to care for them, sleeping outside. And these kind of conditions are rising because Kenya does not have even a mental health care plan for its citizens. And so that so is true for more than 34 countries in Africa. They don't have even a mental health plan for their citizens, and even any tangible programs that really address the problem. And for us to be able to solve this problem, we need to have clear policies that encourage people to embrace those suffering from mental health disorders, and stop and encouraging people to stop using these words. In Kenya, they use the Swahili word for wazimu, and it's as derogatory as that one being called crazy.
Wow. You know what, Dan? You said a lot of things. One, the systemic failure policies. There's no policies. There is no institutions for our people. And three, of course, the unacceptance by families. And the sad part, I'll tell you, psychosis is more common, if you see it in your community, is more common in men. Do you know the reason? Because estrogen, which is a hormone women produce in their sex organs, protects your brain. So that's why we start seeing psychosis later in life in women. If you notice that women, old folks you see in your community who struggle with psychosis or psychotic features, you'll see that it's after birth or probably in the menopause years, because at that time, that phase, their estrogen is low. So we really need our men. We need men and women equally in our communities. Something needs to be done. Dr. Kevin, what are your thoughts? What can be put in place in such situations? Because one, as Dan mentioned, it obviously means that we don't have enough campaigns. And I think the purpose of all of this, the United States of Africa, we are about that. The vision of this community, the vision of this organization is about reaching those villages, because that's where we don't have internet there. People are not able to view what we are discussing right now, to have those aha moments. What can be done in these systems? Because probably things are different in the States. Probably you can share what you're seeing there.
Well, one of the things is that I'm one of the past presidents of the Association of Black Psychologists. And so the goal that we had was to be able to reach out across the globe and establish this idea of African-centered mental health. And so we're still doing it, right? So we reached out into various spaces of Canada, also into Barbados and other spaces. And so we're also in South Africa. So we know that, for example, with the Zulu concept of ukufa kwabantu, right? The idea of abapanza basufulatele, the withdrawal of ancestral protection, right? So people began to explain these kind of behaviors, right? Ukufa kwabantu in the context of abapanza basufulatele, the withdrawal of ancestral protection. And so you have to do the proper umzabezi ritual. We must recognize then that—
I'm impressed with your language. I can't believe Yes.
So when we do proper ritual, then we're able to engage in healing. So my point is that we cannot use European constructs, but we can use the things that our people understand, right? So that is, how do we do the proper umzabezi, the ritual? So that is creating these spaces that people can come in and receive medication. So the medication, the muti, right? The idea of the shop tied into the cultural worldview of the people that has in it what we know that works in the West, that can adjust the hormones that you mentioned, the estrogen and so forth and so on, that can facilitate healing. And it's not seen as the thing over here as what the Afrikaners or what the Europeans do, because they can't be trusted. But it's in the context of what we understand to be true. And that's where we are the bridge between the two, that we understand some of what they talk about, but we also understand how we function. And so we have to do the
context.
Yes, in our context, right? So it's not theirs, it's ours.
Yes. You know what? Immediately you mentioned that, I thought design thinking right there. You bring it to the people, to their understanding, to their cultural ownership. Once you do that, like I see this even in America, even in Canada, I'm noticing a shift when I see my patients coming to see me. There's that sense of relief I always watch my patients. I look at them physically before I even touch them. And when I ask, they're like, oh, I'm so surprised. I'm happy to see someone who looks like me. So there's that sense of identity. We cannot kill that. I love that. Thank you so much.
Yes, but recognize that your approach is not the way that you were taught, right?
Yes.
Right. Yes. And so the thing is that we're not codifying the way that we do our work that can invite people in to come and to be healed. But also we have to be able to inform the mental health ministries of all of these locations. This is how we do our work. We're not creating a European model, right? Because if you examine the European model, it's the one that created a lot of the stuff that we're talking about right now, right? The idea of exporting Africans all over. That's a very a sick system, right? And so we cannot use the oppressor's language, the oppressor's tools, all right, to be able to correct our African reality. So we then understand worldview. Now that doesn't make us perfect. That means that there's some flaws in our worldview, right? That causes us some disruptions. But we have to at least honor the idea of ritual or the ukwezi, the idea of the spiritual enlightenment that comes. And sometimes people are said to have this moment, but really it may be a psychotic moment.
Yes.
But how do we help them to understand that? And that's our job, right?
Wow. Speak their language. Speak to them in the language they understand. In the practice, while you are introducing the very same medications or the very help they need. I love that approach. We need it. I think it's very important. And I honestly think as a physician too, I see it's lacking. I've been in practice for 15 years. That approach, ideally, that's what we use. We use modern medicine. We use and I like the fact that you're not disputing the fact that we're still gonna use that, but in the way, present it in the way that my old Tamkulu grandfather in the village of Gambia, of South Africa, understands it. Thank you so much. It takes us to another discussion. There's an issue of old folks, demented people, Dr. Kevin. I've seen this. I hear about it on social media, being killed in our society, in our villages. People are killed because they are presenting with confusion or probably psychosis that presents dementia. Can you please take us through and educate our people? Because we see this a lot. I've seen it earlier this year and even last year. Dr. Kevin, are you there?
I'm here.
Awesome.
Oh yes, yeah. I'm here. We think about umuntu ngamuntu kabantu, right? The idea of a person is a person because of people. We have to remind our people of our basic principles of Ubuntu, right? In South African context, right? Bimundu in Kenya. We have to. It's the same context of humanity. We lose that because we are becoming more westernized. So we don't know how to treat our people. We don't know how to honor our elders. And so, yes, people are strange. People do some strange things all over. But what they almost do is the thing the same way, right? So in the United States, for example, many times people become schizophrenic with the so-called brain split. They believe themselves to be a God force, to be a deity. Divinity, and the same thing happens. I've seen it in South Africa and also in parts of West Africa that they become more godly, but in their minds. The question is, what are they trying to channel to us? What are they trying to tell us? So we change even the way that we listen to them, and it's tough. But we also don't use European medicine solely. We have to understand that there are things that we already know that work from our people, and so we begin to look at the various herbs to make those connections, and that's how we begin to restructure people to be able to accept our elders as they are doing it, as opposed to killing them. But we kill people in very different ways, right? Let's be clear about that. So even if you come up with a good idea and I don't like it, I can get on Facebook, I can get on social media, and I can kill you in social media by saying that the Dr. Marijuana is talking some lunacy, some craziness. So we don't have to be old to kill one another. The point is that we have to understand to accept the things that make us uncomfortable, to be able to embrace that, and then to be able to find a space for it to further thrive, right? So if that means that we have to look at creating mental health facilities that look like us, the way that we would operate them, so that people can be normalized, they can be healed, then we have to do that, or look at the way that we do it in various parts of the world. So in closing, in the United States, it is not socially acceptable at some level for Black people to go into have a mental health treatment. It's only now becoming more of a statement that we're talking about where we are breaking the stigma of mental health in the Black community. So it is not simply something that is happening on the continent. It is happening globally, and the question is why. And the answer to me is very simple. That we recognize that the system of the oppressor cannot do the healing. We have to be responsible to bring forth a healing methodology, a healing mechanistic process that makes sense to our people, but also more importantly, it works, and that's the heavy lift, because there's no way we can't be certified, we can't be licensed, we can't be whatever those things are that we need from the West to do the things that we know to do. Therefore, we can't make the money. But the reality is, we do the healing work, and we will get paid because they will come along as they've always done. Right? We know that the first vaccine, for example, was introduced in the U.S. by an African. We know that healing methods and methodologies have come from Africa, but we get no credit for those things. So we don't have to become unlike ourselves to do the healing work. We have to become more like ourselves, right? Globally, we connect like we're connecting right now, and then we begin to talk about structures that can do the healing work. We use the also concept. We use the Zulu and the Bella. We use the Kikuyu. We use whoever's concept that we want to use, right, to be able to normalize people into being whole and not try to become Europeans.
Wow, this takes me actually to another discussion that, unfortunately, with what happened, the oppression that happened to the Black people has taken away the Ubuntu, like you are saying, because our culture is very extended. Like we were always in those nuclear families. For us would mean that as much as we know it's a mother and the father and the child, for us it was that very same old Makulu, Tamkulu. But today, those people are killed by the very same grandchildren. Then what can we say? This is interesting because I know that we talk about this all the time, that we need to have this institution. And this is not to say we don't want what exists right now. How do we bring it together in the context of our people? And of course, Dr. Kevin mentioned about just bringing those folks that would learn this. I know that even here in Canada, there's a shift. I've noticed that even the medical community, as conventional, we're starting to be accommodative to the naturopathic medicine. I remember actually a few years ago, I think 10 years ago, there was a conference. I missed it because I was interested to see how do these things link. Because even actually, Dr. Kevin, in the white community, they do a lot of naturopathic medicine. And sometimes there's a shame around it. Our patients, if you don't ask if they use that type of medicine, they will not bring it to your attention. There's a shame around that, even in the white community.
Yeah. I think we need to encourage traditional medicine and more research so we see how it's going to ensure that it can solve the problems that we are facing, the mental health crisis in Africa and also in the diaspora. Because I believe there's a lot of wisdom in the traditional African solutions. And this because they've been ignored for a very long period of time. This is why we are having this kind of crisis. But if we are able to do more research, then that can be really useful. And then we can work on creating the institutions that will make mental health services accessible. because as it is now, you'll find out it is not accessible, and even the institutions that are there for mental health, dilapidated structures, they are basically collapsing, and it takes now even for people to also change the mentality, how they see mental health, be able to prioritize the budgeting and financing of mental health programs, because the challenges that we face in Africa, you'll not get funding for mental health programs or for advocacy, and yet there is no health without mental health. So these things that the governments in Africa needs to step up, work together with non-governmental organizations, so that we can really get to the bottom of the problem and begin solving it. Because once we have the infrastructure ready, then it's going to be very easy to contain the mental health crisis that we have in Africa. And at the same time, it's very important to make the people suffering from mental health feel valued and not to be seen as worthless of the society, because that's what the society makes them to feel like, and that even makes their recovery process very difficult, because they don't get the kind of support that they need.
Yes, wow. Then that's very important, and it takes away from our Africanism, the love we always had for each other. We have become very selfish, and the sad part is, mental illnesses are more. If you look at also just the population spectrum of the world, they are more in the low income and middle class in countries, and there's underdiagnosis of this. Look at what's happening right now in the continent. Do we have researches? Do you have any idea? Any one of you can answer this. Are there any ongoing researches on Black mental health?
There was an organization that I was working on, and it used to focus on mental health research, and they used to target on schools, doing some mental health research on high schools and also primary schools, because that's where people are able to detect the problem at an early stage. You'll see some children having some learning disabilities, and some are even taken as they are lazy, or maybe they are too slow to learn, but it's actually mental health. And I believe that if we have more of this research and also the outreach programs, it's going to really shape the way people see mental health in Africa.
Yes. Thank you so much. Then actually, I'm thinking of the children. You probably have experienced this. How many dropouts in primary school you saw? And when you think about it, Dr. Kevin, these are the kids who were probably misdiagnosed. You know, they were probably learning disabilities or disorders, like Dan is saying, or probably there was an ADHD there, but it was left undiagnosed. These kids, and of course, there was a lot of corporal punishment. These kids were, these symptoms were really, really severe, that these kids would drop out because they didn't have the capability to be there. And also, unfortunately, when you look at the systems this side, such children, they are placed in special schools where they would excel in whatever they could do, non-academic. Maybe they're good in sports, but unfortunately, we don't have such in Africa. There's so much we need to do in the diaspora to bring all these services to Africa and also our people in the African space. Do you have anything to say there, Dr. Kevin?
That speaks to the need for a concerted effort to join as mental health professionals all over, right? And so let me go back and say that there are many members of the Association of Black Psychologists who are doing this work, right? They're making these connections, but we can do more, right? So you mentioned earlier about the herbal medications, right? The idea, of course, Amaku Balo, right? The idea of herbal medicines in the context of the Zulu. And I love how the Zulu break down this idea that you mentioned about children having special needs. And so children can, there are some organic mental health issues that are there. And so how do we address the organic issues. There are things that people have that they are born with genetically, but also there are things that happen socially. And so this is we must understand these systems better, right? So how do we include the Sangomas or the Nyangas in this conversation? How do we talk about the Nkulukulu, right, the great grandfather of Nobalawane? There, the ceremonies that we utilize to pull people together. How do we use the Umtandazi, right, the faith healers in our conversation around the healing work of things like again, like ufu. You have to give me with this ufuzo, the idea of familial genetic disorders,
genetic
but
disorder. Yes,
right?
yes.
The clananya, the idea of the things that
like that's usually interpreted as this crazy we're talking about. Yeah.
There, all right. The isi dalwa, the idea of
that's the mental retardation. Oh my God. Yes.
Right.
All
So
things,
so
yes.
how do we talk about that, and how do we codify our treatment? And that we must understand that it's always in the context of culture, of worldview, right?
Yes.
So they are called ukufa kwabantu, right? These are metaphysical challenges of the people, of the Black people. How do we then talk about how to heal that? And so that is based on cultural worldview. Now, this is where we have to be more directed, even with the works of this organization, right? How do we come together as an organization and begin to institute mental health elements for people within African continent? I'm a part of the board of what's called the World Mental Health Coalition. And my initiative in the organization is to institute elements of mental health treatment interventions for people on the continent. That's it. That's what I said I'm going to do, because we call ourselves the World Mental Health Coalition. What are we doing in the world? They started off talking about the Trump conversation and mental disorders among Black people in America. And I said, if it is a World Mental Health Coalition, then we must be about the business of being global. Now, my challenge to you, Dr. Makiwane, is to see how we can come together with the efforts that Daniel has put together to start to look at mental health treatment in South Africa, in Kenya. I'm going to be in Gambia, right? In the Gambia, we got to do. How do we do this in Ghana? And they're real tough because they're so Europeanized that they don't see the understanding of Anyame as being essential to the conversation of mental health and well-being, right? And so this is our challenge. This is our charge. When you showed the video recently of the lady, some say the mother, some say the aunt. I think you said that it was the mother stepping on her child. That is a real issue that we need to be able to address, because that's off. That's wrong. Right? Yes. How do we get that person into a space and see grabbing her and pulling her into a space to be healed as a normal thing
of healing?
Right? Yeah. In Uganda, I think that's what you said. It was in Uganda. So how do we do that? And I think this is the work of the organization.
Yes. There's a gap, Dan. We have so much to do. There's a gap there, because truly, and again, you talked about South Africa. Recently, I realized that South Africa actually is also one of the highest countries that consumes alcohol. And look at what happens. Also in South Africa, gender-based violence is something that we struggle with. It doesn't matter which socio-economic class you belong to. There's news every day. It's terrible. And it's all coming from the pain that people are living with. Because I always say, people who bleed to people who never cut them, there's issues that are making these people behave this way. And we talk about ufuzo, you talk about that. Yes, it's from the trauma of the ancestors, of what happened to us, right? We see all this alcoholism and we don't address these issues. And it's seen as a social habit, which also gets out of hand. Let's talk about depression and suicide, because we're starting to see men now, they are speaking so open. There's a space called Clubhouse right now.
Mm-hmm.
Level of vulnerability I'm seeing in the way men express themselves. Like I said, thanks to COVID-19, I've never seen such vulnerability. Let's talk about why are men unable to express themselves to a point of killing themselves, because we see them a lot of times. Women are the ones that would try overdose with pills and all. They would do an attempt, but men, when they do it, they use a gun, they use a rope, they go to the bridge, they do it successfully. How do we prevent our men from doing this?
You know, I think
I think.
one. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm saying I think it's because of the culture which puts the man as too masculine, such that the man is not allowed to express himself. He's not allowed to even cry, and he's not even allowed to speak about his weaknesses, because the African society does not recognize a weak man. And if you are too weak, then people will begin disrespecting you. So I think that's the reason why men usually find it difficult to speak about depression, because they are worried even what people will think about them if they speak openly about it and say what they are going through. They'll just in Kenya they'll just call you cheesy. It's another derogatory word, which usually undermines even the dignity of the person who is suffering from mental illness and also depression. So I think the society needs to encourage men to openly speak about depression and about mental health. And through advocacy, we are going to change how the society views mental health, and how men view mental health, so that we don't have a situation where men are struggling until they even commit suicide. And then
Yes.
people later will come to know that, oh, this man had depression, but no one knew about it. And he probably didn't even tell his friends about it.
No. Yes. That's interesting you saying that, because I mean, as we are raising these boys, which that's why I do what I do. I focus on men's health, as you both know, because I'm trying to debunk all these negative connotation, because we're not sorry, and actually even mothers have contributed to this, and of course men, the fathers, have contributed, because it starts with when your boy child is crying, you start saying, no, what is the, you refer to your girl child, what is she gonna think of you? You are weak, a boy doesn't cry. So it starts with those things we say to our boy children, and they grow up repressing these symptoms or these feelings, and what do they do at the end? That's when they explode to their spouses, to their partners. You know, Dr. Kevin, do you want to say anything on that?
You know, I think that Daniel is right, right, and you're saying it as well, that we learn these social lessons about how do men express themselves. I think also that we don't know how to understand when men are actually expressing themselves. So we have to understand it's two parts, right? So too many times we want men to cathart or to release like women, and that's not the way it's going to be done. And so it is understanding that there is a cry for help. There is pain. There is a way to resolve the issues. And so we don't have to look like I mean, gender, and I don't want to get caught there, but gender expressions are just what they are. So my cry for help, just like children, when they like someone as a child, rather than say, I like you, they go hit the person. It's like that makes no sense. Why are they hitting the person that they like? But the reality is that I can't express it any other way. So we have to have two things. One is that we have to have a space where we allow men to express themselves, and this is what is happening, right? This is what's really going on with me, deep down within my insides, and this is bothering me, where I'm not seen as weak, but I also understand that there is a necessity for there to be strength, and that there is strength in recognizing that you have some vulnerabilities, right? And so, because in that there is support. So we have to be clear that we can't and not expect men to look like women and vice versa. We can't have women to express like men. There's a reason that we exist in the manner that we exist, but also we need to be able to allow our people to express themselves in a way that is healthy. Now, in my back part of this is that when we exist in the context of European oppression, European domination, we're always trying to find a way to be and to express our beingness, and we don't have time to be vulnerable when we're at war. Even when taking a dog out for a poop, the dog does not just poop any place. It's to make sure that before I start pooping, is it safe? Am I going to be able to release and not be taken advantage of, right? So we have to recognize that when we start releasing, not that it's all poop. My point is that when we do release, we have to have a safe space to release, and that safe space must affirm our beingness. And oftentimes we don't feel safe because we're always under attack.
Yes.
Right?
That's interesting you saying that, because it's interesting that last year when COVID-19 hit, that's when I started actually focusing on men's health. And I said, you know what, WHO, UN, they give us all these stats about men committing suicide, gender-based violence, drug abuse, all these things. And then I said, and then what? I mean, we see all wonderful icons out there, the Oprahs, the Michelle Obamas. They are empowering women and girls, which is fantastic. I love it because we need it with the pain we are experiencing as women in general. But there is no place for men. I didn't hear anything. I don't know if you guys have any idea of these safe places or these icons who are going out there to encourage boys and empowering, because the same empowered girls will be married one day to these boys that are broken. Right? So how do we bridge the gap? And like you are saying, the safety part. So I decided to embark on this journey. I basically invited few people I knew, my friends from church, and just generally, we started doing a webinar on issues that matter to men, and just basically men's health, sexual health, all these things. Interestingly, in the beginning, people were not showing their names. They were anonymous. I couldn't say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, speak. Because they needed to be safe. 6 weeks later, some of them are showing their faces. People are showing their names. So I think we also need, I always say, we need to bring as women too, because I mean, you guys are interacting with us. So we also need to create, as we are born with this maternal energy and maternal power of nurturing, we need to tap into those energies so that we can bring the safety. And of course, men are obviously also men need to create this. But here's the thing, you also men also tease or look down on a man who is expressive. Why is it that men would start also looking down on the man? Like there was a man I interviewed, immediately he mentioned how he was sexually assaulted by a woman. People said, men actually, they started trolling him. You enjoyed it. There's no such. Can you believe that? And this is a man who is showing his vulnerability, showing his pain, and this had contributed to his mental health. How do we heal? How do we heal our men to be more sensitive and also to be more encouraging to others?
I think through awareness, because many just like making fun of people who are expressing their vulnerability, and it's just human nature.
Yes.
And some will see that such a man is a weak man. That's why he's expressing his vulnerability, and probably the reason why he was sexually assaulted. But that's not usually the case. Yes. And we need to really change the attitude, how we approach such kind of issues of sexual violence against men. As it is now, many systems are geared towards the girl child empowerment and also the women empowerment. But when it comes to the boy child, there are no systems in place to equally empower the boy child. You'll see there's she and her, but you never see him and her. advocacy, these celebrities doing some advocacy for the boy child.
Yes, yes.
So I think
It's
that needs to change.
Yes. And we continue, like I always say, and then we continue complaining about men and the boys, but we are not doing anything much to help them. So this is a global phenomenon. Like I said, I don't see much done even at a global level. I mean, we talk about, and I know that it comes from a place, the protection for women and girls, it comes from a place of pain. What has happened to girls, children? I mean, we look at the workforce in the work industries, women are earning less. So there's so much, of course, that needs to happen there too. That would take us to another discussion of patriarchy. I'm not sure if you guys have time for us to discuss that, because it's another discussion on its own. What can you say? Because right now we're going to close. Do you want to say anywhere, Dr. Kevin, to our people?
So, I was listening to Daniel and listening to the how you set it up, Dr. Makiwani, how you talked about we get socialized into doing certain things, and so we begin to make mockery of those who express themselves, and that is true, that it becomes part of what happens in nature, right? The idea of the thing that is weaker. And and you mentioned about a person being molested by a woman, and how that gets turned upside down because of the gender roles, that men are supposed to be the aggressors, the ones that go out and conquer the territory of women. And so part of that has some truth, right? The idea not to go and conquer. The part of it is that is the nature of who we are as people. The problem is that we socialize that in a way that is very European, and that we are conquering something as opposed to forming a solid relationship with someone else. And so we have to begin to reshape that whole process. But also we have to have we talk about men, we have to have women to be able to accept men who express themselves, right? That's a whole other piece, right? So men are not accepting themselves, one another, but women, if a man expresses himself, sometimes the woman sees him as weak, and so there becomes this aggressive nature. So men are receiving cues also from women. So I can't let you go around a brother being, expressing yourself, because again, the woman is not going to respect you. So we have to be able to shift how we all see expression of emotions and expression of feeling and affect, that we all have moments where we feel vulnerable, that we feel afraid, that we feel a challenge. But inside of that, there's something that we do as men with that fear, that we do as women, and that's how we move forward. And so I think that the real work comes into how we see our womanhood, how we see our manhood, and how do we express it in a way that is healthy for us all. There is a time that we cannot spend time crying and whimpering when we're in battle. And let's be clear that much of our existence as people of African descent is perpetually in a state of war. And we have to find those moments of respite. You mentioned the church, for example. When you go into a church facility, a Christian facility, and you have a European image of the deity of Jesus there, that is an attack on your manhood. It's an attack on your identity, because even in that book it says that he has feet like burnt brass and hair like wool. So there is an attack there. So we're fighting that attack. So how do we cathartic? And so we're supposed to be able to release like a little docile, effeminate European image of Jesus. Or are we supposed to be a revolutionary like the one that is mentioned truly in that text? Because if we go back and we deal with the text, even in a text that was a person he traveled with named Peter, who pulled out a knife and cut a man's ear off. To cut an ear off means that you had to been rugged, you had to been a thug, because he didn't act. I mean, the ear is precisely against the face. So to cut the ear off was very deliberate and very strategic, which means that they was very skilled, right? Yeah. And so we have to be able to see ourselves in these spaces as being at war. So we're at war in the community where we are being snuffed out and being lynched in the U.S. And so all these things are happening all over. So we're in a constant state of attack. And the question becomes, how do I express myself as a man when I know that I'm at war? And I can't sit around crying when it's time to fight. But we have to learn how to turn it on and turn it off. And that's where we come together as a community to say, look, brother, I'm on your side. I got you. We're together. What's bothering you? And we can talk about that. And then we get together, we put on our armor, and we go out and we fight some more.
I loved it. I loved that.
Yeah.
The sense of community, and that would bring back our Africanism, because I love the African family model, what we had before, and it doesn't exist anymore. It's sad. Dan, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, you just reminded me of when I was in primary school, how my colleagues used to mock me because they were saying that I don't talk too much, and when the teacher asked me questions, I take a lot of time to answer. Sometimes I don't even answer, and I also had a small cycle of friends. I didn't like sitting close to girls. And one day, the teacher forced me to sit close to a girl, and I resisted. So now they started mocking me and told me that I'll never get married because I don't like girls. But the reason why they didn't even ask me the reason why I did that,
Right.
because it's not that I didn't like girls, but the reason was that that classmate was thinking so bad, such that you couldn't sit next to her.
And again, it goes back to how sometimes children are raised to be shushued. You don't express your feelings, so you are unable to say, hey, you know what? I mean, you could have said it in a polite way, but I mean, these are the difficult conversations in general. How would a child in primary school be able to do that?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
So that shows how people are usually misunderstood, and because of their inability to express themselves. And people are usually quick to judge and say, oh, this person probably he or she has some disability or something like that. Maybe this is a coward. And when you speak about you being a man and then being sexually harassed, people quickly start mocking you and saying you are very weak. I should have been the other way around. And this kind of mentality needs to change.
Yes, men are seen as these aggressive beings, and unfortunately they become like, I always actually, when my mothers come in to see me with their children and a child has this t-shirt that is more mocking to this child, I say, your child will become, we need to be careful what we say to us, because we become. And the type of, also the language we use towards ourselves or towards other people, it also influences how people become. You know what? I would love to have this conversation with you guys. I'm enjoying it. And I loved the fact that we just decided to hop on here and have no necessary topic and just discuss these issues. And I would like us to come back. Dr. Kevin, I would love to bring you back to talk about this post-enslavement issue we have, because it doesn't only affect Africa, it affects people of African descent globally. I would like us to come back. And of course, if I don't, Amasha said she would definitely do that. Dan, thank you so much for coming in. And I wish you could also go and look for teachers. Go and look for that teacher or the girls that thought you were not good. Look at what you've started, this big organization. Now they would understand and get a better understanding of who you are, right? Thank you so much.
I'll do that.
Right. Yes. Thank you so much for your time. We will come back here. And thanks so much to our viewers. We couldn't really see what's happening on Facebook. We'll go and attend to those comments. Again, you guys have a wonderful weekend. And of course, our viewers out there, thank you so much for joining us. Next week, we'll be here, same time, same place. Take care.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.